Hey everyone, Mr. MC here. This is Lap Guide for Nurburgring Nordschleife with the Porsche 997. Let's get this started. We'll be going through this guide a little bit faster since we're on the Nordschleife, and this car is a bit understeery and also a bit oversteery due to its rear engine rear-wheel drive layout, so you want to be a bit careful about that. So your first braking point is going to be well before the pit wall on the right ends. Brake in a straight line as much as possible, then slowly start to turn in and ease off on the brakes. Take your time starting to accelerate, as this car does have a bit of an oversteery nature. Use the sign on the left as your braking point. You want to use some braking so you can get some of the weight towards the front of the car and be able to go through this turn at a higher rate of speed. Brake just before you reach this patch of dry grass that is on the right. Brake as much as you can in a straight line before you have to make your way through these two turns. Adjust your braking power as necessary and slowly start to accelerate. After this left turn, use some quick bursts of braking to get the car to rotate around these turns. Go to the left, and when the tarmac changes color, that is when you start to brake. Take your time going through these turns, and when you're pointing towards this apex right here, that is when you start to accelerate. When you reach the very top of the hill, you want to brake hard for just a moment, then slowly ease off on the brakes. Slowly apply the throttle so you can make sure that the car doesn't want to slide around too much or do anything oversteery. We'll fast forward through this and look for this sign on the right, as you'll want to brake hard for a moment just before you pass it. Slowly ease off on the brakes, slowly apply the throttle, and brake well before the curb on the left ends. This should give you just enough space to be able to make it through this turn. Stay on third gear, slowly ease off on the brakes, and then slowly start to apply the throttle. We'll go ahead and fast forward through this again, and look for the curb on the right, as you'll want to brake right after it starts. Take advantage of the apex, then brake a bit more. Just try to smoothly go through these turns. Try to get the car to smoothly rotate around these two turns. Straighten out the car as you make this right turn so you can start to fully accelerate. For this left-handed turn, you want to brake pretty early. Brake hard for a very short moment, then slowly ease off on the brakes and bring yourself towards the inside of the turn. Then use your riding that is on the ground as your next braking point. Brake as much as you can in a straight line, then slowly start to ease off on the brakes as you turn in. Carefully start to accelerate so you don't initiate any oversteer from the car. Then use these signs on the left as your next braking point. Brake a little bit sooner than I do here, which you'll see right now, as I end up going a little bit wide through this turn. Start to fully accelerate, bring yourself to the right, and ease off the throttle so you can smoothly go through these S's. Brake before the curb on the right starts, slowly bring yourself in, and when you hit the apex, you can start to slowly accelerate. Brake pretty early for this turn, so you want to brake at around the area where I stopped the clip. Ease off on the brakes as you need to make it through these turns. Slowly start to accelerate so you don't get any wheel spin out of the car. Brake well before the curb on the right ends. Slowly bring yourself in and slowly start to accelerate. Then brake well before the curb on the left ends, and don't start to fully accelerate right away, as there's a little bump that can cause the car to lose control as you go up the hill. Brake well before you reach this blue dot that is hanging out on the ground. So brake as much as you can in a straight line, slowly start to ease off on the brakes, and then slowly transition over to the throttle. It's a little bumpy here, so you want to be very careful to not get the car to lose control. It's possible to stay on fourth gear if you're not getting slipstream from anyone. Then start to brake before the gray curb on the right starts. Brake hard for a short moment, slowly ease off on the brakes. Take your time, slowly starting to accelerate because you don't want to make too much contact with the grass that is on the right. You can take this mini right hand turn at full throttle, then brake well before the curb on the left starts. Just try to stick to the inside of the turn as much as you can. Smoothly start to accelerate so the car doesn't want to whip around. Use the shadow of this happy little tree on the left as your next braking point. Bring yourself to the inside of the carousel. Take your time with the throttle input, and once your car is facing towards the exit, you can start to fully accelerate. Go onto 4th gear, then ease off the throttle when you make this left turn. Brake before the curb on the right starts, slowly ease off on the brakes. Ease off the throttle for this turn, then brake early for this next right-hander. Just take your time, slowly starting to accelerate. Stay on the left side of the track. Use some braking for this right-hander, a bit more braking for this left-hander, and use some braking if necessary here to maintain stability on the car. Brake before the curb on the left ends. Take your time, slowly starting to accelerate, and you want to brake pretty early for this turn right here. Just try to stick to the inside of this left turn. Then brake right before the gray curb on the left ends. Just take your time, slowly starting to accelerate because you don't want to go too wide out of this turn. Brake when the curb on the left is about to end. Once again, just take your time, slowly starting to accelerate. You want to brake right around here for this next turn. This turn is a little bit sharp and you will need to go down to 2nd gear. Just focus on getting the car to rotate and also getting the car to straighten up before you start to fully accelerate. Bring yourself to the left side of the track and brake right before you make the jump. Once again, you just want to take your time, slowly starting to accelerate. And for this upcoming left turn right here, you can ease off on the throttle to maintain stability. For the upcoming right turn, you want to ease off on the throttle as you start to turn, because if you don't ease off on the throttle as you turn, you're going to end up going off track. Then brake before the curb on the left ends, and this should give you just enough space to be able to make it through this turn and make any adjustments if necessary. Bring yourself to the right and brake before the curb on the right ends. Take your time, slowly starting to accelerate, and you want to brake right around here. This spot doesn't really have any braking points, so you want to make sure you know where you need to brake. Bring yourself all the way to the inside of the turn. Slowly bring yourself to the left and brake well before the curb on the left ends. Be very patient with your throttle input for these turns. If you're not patient like me, you're going to end up going wide, which will affect your X speed. So we're going to go ahead and speed up through this section. And another thing that you want to do is actually brake when the curb on the left starts. This will give you enough space to be able to make any adjustments if needed. If you brake later, you risk going very wide, like how I almost did over here. Then brake when the grass on the left ends. Just make sure you don't hit the inside wall. Take your time, slowly starting to accelerate, and you are good to go. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. So this is Mr. MCA wishing you a good race, and I'll see you in the next video.